guys, this is Brindy with another tutorial. Last week I posted a video of a time-lapsed edit of this image, and I promised you all that I'll show you guys how I edited this image exactly. So yeah, let's get started. So this image was a composite of two separate pictures that I took. This one is the first one that I took, and then this one's the second one. If you're wondering, I took this image in front of a softbox, an Octabox to be exact. It's a continuous light, it's not a strobe, and yeah, it's very cheap. I got it off of Amazon for like little of nothing, so I'll just link it down in the description if you guys are interested. So I'm just going to go on and import these into Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a composite. I want to put this image on top of this one. So what I'm going to do, let me click right here. So I'm going to click right here on this tab and drag it down. Now I'm going to grab my move tool, click on this image, and drag it on over. And that put the image right on top of the other. So now on my keyboard, I'm going to click Ctrl T for my transform tool. And I'm going to click this chain link right here so that this image can keep its proportions after I've resized it. So I'm resizing it by dragging it down. It gets smaller, dragging it up makes it bigger. So I'm going to drag it down, and I'm actually going to lower the opacity a tad. That way I can be sure that I'm scaling this hen to match this one right here. All right, there's good. I'm going to drag it down a little bit more, and now I'm just going to hover over the corner, the bottom corner right here, and I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. That way the finger is practically pointing down to this middle finger right here. I'm going to up the opacity, and I'm going to click the check mark. Okay, so now we have this big old block on top of my hand. So I'm going to create a layer mask. And I'm going to click B on my keyboard for my brush tool. I'm going to make sure that I have a black soft brush selected. And make sure your opacity is at 100%. So I'm just going to slowly start painting the white background off of this hand right here. Okay, and that's good enough. And this strip right here, I'm just going to go zoop, like that. Now, I'm not going to lie, there are other ways to composite images. I'll be using my paintbrush tool for the entire composite, but people usually use like the lasso tool and end up, cutting out, the image and then placing it on top of the other image. I'm just going to be honest and say that I'm no good at doing that, so I take the longer route by doing this. Okay, so we're done with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer by clicking this page looking thingy right here. And now I'm going to sample the white in my image. And note that I'm not going to sample an area that looks gray like right here. You can kind of see the light part that was inside of my softbox. I'm just going to select here instead. Now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make sure that I make this entire thing solid white. All of the gray areas that I see, I'm going to make sure that I paint over it to where it's just solid white. Oh, and by the way, I clicked Alt for my eyedropper tool, and I selected the white in the background. And that changes your foreground color to the color you've selected. And my brush is very, very soft. My opacity is at 100%, and here we go. Okay, so now as I get closer to the hand, since my brush is very soft, the color ends up going onto my subject's skin. So I'm actually going to go right here and I'm going to change my hardness. I'm going to make it about, I'm going to give 30% of try. If that's not hard enough for me and I notice that the paint is still, you know, overlapping, I'm going to up it a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to add my butterfly to the background. So I got my butterfly from, I guess it's called Deviant Art. I can't remember, but I'll link it down below. So I'm going to click right here on my folder. So you're just going to click and drag the butterfly picture onto your image. Okay, so I have my butterfly. I'll be using the one here in the middle. So I'm going to click this right here, and I'm going to start to scale it a little bit. Just roughly, and we'll go back and do it again after I erase the other ones. Click on your check mark. Now I'm going to create a layer mask on my butterfly layer. Click B on your keyboard, make sure you have a black brush selected. And I'm just going to erase the butterflies that I don't need. Alrighty, so now I'm going to click my move tool. Move him about right here. I'm going to scale him a little bit more. So I'm going to click on Ctrl T for my transform tool. I'm going to select this right here to keep its proportions. And now I'm just going to shrink it a bit. So now I'm going to fade the butterfly a little bit more so that it can just kind of blend with everything. So I'm going to fade it down to about 85, looks like a little much. Let's take it up to about 90%. Okay, next we're going to convert the entire image to black and white. So I'm going to go down here to my adjustment layers and I'm going to select black, white. And right here where it says preset, I'm going to change it to maximum black. And that's perfect. I specifically like this effect on the hands. It gives it more of that silhouette type look. But I'm not really liking it on the butterfly. So what I want to do is I want to darken the butterfly as well so that it'll look like more of a shadow type thing, more of a silhouette, which is what the picture is. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to duplicate this layer. And I'm going to change my blending mode to multiply. So I love what it did to the butterfly, but not so much what it did to my hands. So I'm going to click Ctrl I on my keyboard, and that gets rid of the effect entirely because I just inverted my layer mask. So now I'm going to grab my brush tool, and I'm going to make sure that I have a very soft brush, and my opacity is at 100%. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the effect back onto the butterfly. Make sure your brush is white. So notice how I'm trying not to select the highlighted areas too much because it gives the effect that the light is coming through the wings. It's kind of showing that the wings are kind of transparent. So I'm going to take my opacity to about 25%. And I'm going to just darken the highlights just a tad, but not too much. So now the highlights on my hands, I want those to be a little bit more strong. So I'm going to create a new layer. Now I'm going to get a white brush. I'm just going to make sure it's pure white. Click B on my keyboard. I'm going to zoom on in, and I'm going to take my opacity down to about 30. I might lower it a little bit more. Oh yeah, a lot more. Let's take it down to about 20. And instead of me dodging and burning, I just use my brush tool. So I'm just going to look at all of the highlighted areas and just paint over them a little bit more to make them stronger. 20 is too much too. Let's try 10. That's better. Okay, so we can look at the before and after. And I am pretty much liking that, but I'm just going to lower it a tad bit more. So let's go to about 50. And that really just brings out some of the rim lighting. So now what I want to do is I want to create a new layer with all of these layers. So I'm going to click Ctrl Alt Shift on my keyboard along with E. And that just creates a new layer from everything I've done down here. So on this layer, what we're going to do is we're going to add texture to the background. I'm not really liking just the solid background. I love adding a little bit of texture to it to make it seem a little bit more, you know, interesting and not so flat. So it just adds depth to it. So I'm going to duplicate this layer by clicking Ctrl J on my keyboard. I'm going to go back to my folder. And I have this texture right here that I found for free online. I will link it below as well. I'm just going to click and drag it over. Now I'm just going to stretch it a tad. So I'm going to just stretch it on over here and over here, just making sure that it's covering the entire background. Click on the check mark. And I'm going to do that one more time. Add it. And this time I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to stretch it out. And then you click on your check mark. Now I'm going to add these textures into their own folder. Okay, so on the folder, I'm just going to click on it. It's already selected, and I'm going to change the blending mode to darken. Now I'm going to click on each layer and start to lower the opacity a tad. You know what? I need to stretch this one a little bit more because in the corners it's showing just a little flawness. There we go. Okay, I'm going to lower the opacity of the entire thing once more. And that's good. So now I want to blur the background a little bit. So I'm going to have to go and blur each texture. So I'm going to click on this one first, and I'm going to click on Filter, Blur, and then go to Gaussian Blur. My radius is at 15.3, which is what I like, so I'm going to keep it there. Now I'm going to do the same for the other texture. Click it, select Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. Okay, so now you can't really tell right now, but the texture is on my hands, which doesn't bother me because you can't see it, but the blur effect also blurred my hand a tad. So I need to remove that by clicking right here on my layer mask. And notice that I added that layer mask to the entire folder and not to each texture. So my layer mask is white, so I'm going to need a black brush to remove the effect. And my opacity is at 100%. And my hardness is at 0. Now I'm just going to paint it off. I'm going to close this folder. I'm just going to play with the opacity a little more. So now it's time to get a little creative with your gradients. I love using gradients. So I want to practically darken right down here to make it look like it has like this fading shadow type effect that I normally do on a lot of my images. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to select gradient. And right here where it says gradient, just click on it and I'm going to click on this one right here. And you should have the same exact one. Select OK. Now I'm just going to drag it down just to where it's kind of shadowed, but not too much. So about right there is good. And I'm going to click on the layer mask, select your brush, and I'm going to make sure I have a black brush selected. And I'm just going to remove the shadowing from my arm. Try this again. Just make a big brush and do a swipe. Yeah, just a single swipe is good. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select gradient. Select the same one. And this time, I'm going to change my style to radial, or radial. I'm not really sure how you say that. I'm going to select the box where it says reverse. And now I'm going to drag the light area right over my butterfly, which is the main subject of the image. And you know what? I'm going to change the scale. Just going to take it out a bit. That's good. And I'm going to click on my layer mask once again. My brush is already selected and I have a black brush, but this time I'm going to take my opacity down to about 45%. Now I'm going to do a few large swipes up here. I'm trying to remove a lot of the shadowing from the top of the image. And then I'm going to do a swipe down here, like a crescent shape. I'm going to do one more swipe. That's good. Now I'm going to take my opacity down to about 25%. I'm just going to start going over the darkest part down here, just to lighten it a tad. I'm going to look at the before and after, and that seems great. I'm going to take my opacity down to about 75%, and that's good. So now I'm going to flatten my image by going to my background layer, right-clicking, and select Flatten Image. Okay, so now I'm going to crop. Click your crop tool. I'm going to select the lower left corner and drag it up a tad. When I do this, I try to make sure that my intersection right here is kind of touching this finger. Select the check mark. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a warm filter. That's extremely warm, so we're going to take this down to about 7%. I'm going to lower this opacity a little bit more to 50. Right-click your background layer, select Flatten Image, and then you're done. So if you like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please comment down below. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.